At a time when the world seemed to have forgotten God, when good was a joke and evil was fashionable, Noah was born. Son of Lamech, grandson of Methuselah, he arrived in a dark setting where the whole earth breathed violence, corruption, and pride. It was as if every heart had packed its bags and moved far away from the Creator. His name, Noah, said a lot. It meant rest, relief. And that was no accident. Lamech, holding the boy in his arms, said something that sounded more like a prophecy than a father's affection. This one will comfort us in our work and in the suffering of our hands. It was as if he already knew that this boy would be different, and he was. Subscribe to the channel for more exciting Bible stories and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. If this content touches your heart and you want to support us, feel free to click on the Thanks a Lot button. All help is welcome and makes a big difference. Noah grew up as someone who went against the grain. While everyone else did whatever they wanted, he stopped, thought, and chose another path. He didn't follow the flow. He wasn't perfect, of course, but he had something rare, a willing heart. He was like a point of light on a map covered in darkness. While others built towers of ego, he learned to listen to that soft voice that didn't shout but carried weight. The voice of God. Time passed and Noah, now a grown man, remained steadfast. And it wasn't easy. Imagine living in a world where no one else cared about what was right, where every neighbor, every friend, every street was full of mockery, injustice, and deceit. But even so, he remained focused, like someone who knows that something greater is coming. While the people sank into empty parties, well-told lies and wickedness that became fashionable, Noah followed a lonely path. It was like walking against the wind, with people looking askance, laughing behind his back. He was the type who didn't mix just for the sake of mixing, not because he thought he was better, but because he felt that none of it made sense. And between us, in a world without direction, someone who lives with purpose always makes people uncomfortable. He was the kind of man who spoke little, but acted a lot. When others traded truths for convenience, he kept his word. When evil knocked on his door, he didn't open it. This, of course, did not go unnoticed. There were those who thought he was strange, square, outdated. But Noah wasn't there to please the crowd. He lived for something greater, and that was what sustained him. Even when contempt came disguised as a joke, God saw it all. He watched every gesture, every choice Noah made. It wasn't just about being good in a bad world. It was about being faithful when no one else wanted to listen. His faithfulness was like a candle burning in the middle of a storm, stubborn, constant, and that caught the attention of heaven. Then, on a day like any other, the unexpected happened. God broke the silence, not with a soft whisper, but with a heavy warning that cut through the air. The end was near. Noah listened, silent, without trembling. And there, amid the smoke of a world falling apart, God gave him an absurd mission to build an ark, a gigantic boat on dry land. Without a cloud in the sky, with no forecast of anything, it was the kind of order that seemed crazy and that required faith with muscles. And Noah began to build. The hammer struck. Every day, the sound of wood being cut and fitted echoed through the valley like an endless clock. Noah, with calloused hands and sweat running down his face, built the ark. A huge boat made with exact measurements, instructions coming directly from God. It was wood upon wood, board upon board, patience upon mockery, because while he worked, the people watched and laughed. "Look at that crazy old man building a ship where there's no river," they said, laughing. Some brought their children to see it up close, as if it were a circus show. Others made jokes, teased and made fun of him. But Noah continued, steadfast, day after day, like someone who knew a secret that no one else wanted to hear. The order he had received was clear: I will make it rain. Only no one knew what rain was. Until then, the world had been watered by mist, by moisture that sprang from the earth. Talk of water falling from the sky? Absurd. It was easier to believe in three-headed dragons. But God had been clear. He would destroy everything, not out of anger, but because evil had taken over. And the ark would be the shelter, the only safe place. As the years passed, the construction grew. And it wasn't just wood that was piling up. Time was also piling up the urgency. It was like an invisible clock, ticking louder and louder, closer and closer. And even without seeing a cloud in the sky, Noah continued. He knew that faith is not based on what you see, but on what you hear and believe. Suddenly, different sounds began to emerge from the camp. Heavy footsteps, hoofbeats, wings cutting through the wind. A pair of elephants came walking side by side, as if they knew the way. Then came zebras, giraffes, lions, birds of all colors, 2 by 2, no confusion, no fighting. It was as if some invisible force was guiding them straight to the ark. The people of the city stopped. At first they looked on with curiosity, then with amazement. "This isn't normal," some murmured, but soon their pride returned. "It's just a coincidence, a trick of nature." They pretended not to see the obvious. While the animals entered, Noah and his family moved quickly, carefully organizing everything: food, water, space for each species. It was like building a small world inside a boat. And the ark was more than a shelter. It was a divider, a powerful symbol. It separated those who listened to God's voice from those who preferred to laugh at it. Every piece of wood, every space filled inside said the same thing: "It's going to happen. Get ready." But those outside still mocked, as if they had all the time in the world. That's when the final order came. God said, "Get into the ark, you and your whole household, because I have seen that you are righteous among this generation." And Noah went in, his wife, his sons, his daughters-in-law. Everyone was inside. The last adjustments were made, the doors checked, the animals settled, and then, bang! The door closed by itself. A loud bang, like a period written by the hand of God himself. Inside, silence. Outside, doubt. The sky was still clear, the earth still dry, and then, for hours and hours, nothing. But like someone waiting for the first chord of a somber song, something began to change. It was just a drop, almost timid, dripping from a tree leaf. Then another came, and another. In minutes, the sky, once blue and peaceful, became heavy, dark, laden as if swallowing the light. The air changed. The clouds seemed to roar. And then, as if the sky had exploded from within, rain poured down with a force the world had never seen before. It wasn't just water coming from above. The ground cracked, fountains opened, rivers sprang from nowhere. It was as if the earth was crying with the sky. Around the ark, what had once been solid ground turned to mud, then puddles, then rapids. And the people, those who had laughed and mocked, began to run, to scream, to bang on the door of the ark, to beg. But it was too late. The door had been sealed by God, and when he closes, no one opens. Inside, Noah felt everything. The ark began to rock, thunder shook the wood, and the animals became agitated. But there was also a quiet peace. He knew he was in the right place. He knew that even though he didn't understand every detail, he had trusted, and now all that was left was to wait. Outside, the world disappeared under the waters. Houses, crops, cities, all swallowed up, with no chance of defense. The rain did not stop. Day and night without pause. 40 days, 40 nights. Time seemed frozen. The sound of rain turned into sad music, like a lament from the heavens. Inside the ark, the routine was different. Feeding the animals, maintaining order, taking care of the family. Each day was a challenge, each night a test. And even though they were safe inside, Noah's heart was heavy. After all, he knew what was happening outside. But what he didn't know yet was how long that water would cover the entire world. Time inside there seemed to have entered a strange rhythm. Days and nights became almost the same, marked only by the rhythm of the rain beating on the roof of the ark like an eternal drum. 40 days, 40 nights, water without respite. And it wasn't just any rain, it was a liquid fury, a deep cleansing, as if the sky were washing the world and everything in it. Noah woke up early, even without the sun to guide him. He took care of the animals and organized everything with the help of his family. Every space in the ark had a purpose. Every sound was familiar, the mooing, the chirping, the soft snoring of some sleeping animal. But there were also heavy silences, thoughts that came when everything was too quiet, because even surrounded by life, he knew that outside, everything had been taken away. Everything. The water covered everything. The highest mountains, the fields, the cities. There was nowhere to step. The ark floated alone in a world without ground. It was like being on a new planet, colorless, shapeless, only water everywhere, and the sky, an endless gray. But inside that giant shell, Noah held on tight. He didn't know what would come next or how much time was left, but he knew that God had not forgotten him. Over time, the rain stopped, but the sea still covered everything. Days turned into weeks. The ark's swaying was now slower, as if the world were beginning to breathe again. Noah climbed up to the opening at the top every day, looked at the horizon, and all he saw was water. Water everywhere. Until, one day, a thought came to him. It was time to look for a sign, a way to know if there was any land nearby. That's when he released the first messenger, a raven, black as night, free to fly and disappear. The raven flapped its wings, cutting through the heavy air, disappearing on the horizon with no promise of return. Noah stood there waiting, one eye on the sky, the other on his heart. But time passed, and nothing. The raven did not return. Perhaps it had found something to land on. Perhaps it was flying in circles. Perhaps it was no longer alive. The silence of the answer was worse than the wait. So Noah tried again, but this time with a dove, a light, calmer bird, a symbol of peace. He held it for a moment before releasing it, as if entrusting a question to the wind. And there it went, flying slowly, disappearing among the clouds that still covered part of the sky. Hours later, the small silhouette appeared again, and it landed back in Noah's hand, but with empty feet. It was a sign that there was still no dry land. The earth was still hidden, sleeping beneath the waters. Noah took a deep breath. He would wait longer. 7 days later, he tried again. He released the same dove. This time, the return was different. The bird came back, but not empty-handed. In its beak was a green, fresh branch, a small olive branch. Small, simple, but to Noah it was worth more than gold. It was the first sign of life outside the ark. A piece of land saying, "I'm back." Noah knew. The water was receding. Creation was beginning to show its face again, but he didn't rush. He didn't force anything. He waited another week and released the dove for the last time. And this time it didn't come back. It had found a place to land, a place to live. The world outside was beginning to open up, and it was in that meaningful silence that God spoke once more. Now, it was not time to wait. It was time to act. The order was clear. Leave the ark. Noah opened the door of the ark, and for the first time in a long time, smelled the scent of wet earth. The air was different, clean, alive. The silence outside was different from the silence inside. It tasted like a new beginning. He looked around. Everything was new, but also empty. No houses, no human sounds, just the noise of the wind blowing through the trees that were growing again. The animals came out in single file as if they knew that this moment was bigger than them. The earth was theirs again. The ground was firm, but marked. It seemed to say, "Much has been lost, but there is still a chance." And Noah, before doing anything else, built an altar. He took some of the pure creatures and offered a sacrifice. It was his way of saying thank you. Not with words, but with action. The smoke rose slowly, dancing in the air, carrying the scent of gratitude straight to heaven. And God felt it, like a father who hears his son without him having to speak. And then he promised, not only to Noah, but to all of creation, he would never again destroy the world with a flood. Never again. Even knowing that human beings would continue to be flawed, even seeing that the heart could still stray, God decided to renew his trust. Then something magical happened. A rainbow appeared in the sky, colorful, bright, a rainbow like never before. It wasn't just beautiful, it was a sign, an eternal reminder of the promise made. Every time the sky darkened and clouds threatened to fall again, that rainbow would shine as if to say, "I remember." But God didn't stop there. He spoke more. He established covenants, gave directions, and handed down rules for this new phase of humanity. Meanwhile, Noah looked at the earth as if he were looking at land ready for planting. And he planted. With his own hands, he chose seeds, and among them came. With the earth breathing again and hope sprouting everywhere, Noah became a farmer. It was like starting from scratch, choosing where to step, what to plant, how to rebuild life. And among so many seeds, he chose one that carried an ancient promise, the vine, the grape, the fruit that, when cared for with patience, produces wine. And that's what he did. He cultivated, harvested, trod, fermented. He created the first wine after the flood. But wine, like everything in life, has two sides. It serves to celebrate, but it can also confuse. On one of those quiet nights, Noah drank too much. Sitting in the shade of his own plantation, he let his glass fill once, then again, until his body relaxed too much and he ended up lying down, exposed, vulnerable. A simple and ugly human mistake, the kind we make when we think everything is under control. The one who found Noah in that state was his son Ham, but instead of protecting his father's honor, he laughed, he mocked him, he belittled him, he ran to tell his brothers like someone spreading gossip. But Shem and Japheth, upon hearing this, did the opposite. They took a cloak, walked backwards, and covered their father without even looking. Respect in silence. Love that does not expose itself. When Noah woke up and learned what had happened, he felt the weight of disappointment, not with the wine, but with the reaction. And it was at that moment that, with striking words, he declared blessings and curses on his sons, on his descendants. Cam, Sem, and Japheth each received a destiny. And without realizing it, Noah planted there not only grapes, but the roots of what would become peoples, nations, future histories. The days passed, the trees grew, and Noah, now older, watched everything. Each generation being born like new leaves on an old branch. The years passed, and Noah grew old, surrounded by life. Where once there had been mud and rubble, there were now green fields, rivers running free, children chasing butterflies. He walked slowly, his eyes deeper and his steps shorter, but his gaze was still steady. Not the gaze of one who knew everything, but of one who had seen too much to doubt. It was 350 years after the flood. Enough time to see grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren growing up and spreading across the earth. And every new face that was born carried a piece of him, a memory, a story, a legacy. Noah no longer needed to say much. His presence was a living reminder of what had been saved, what God had done. The marks on his face spoke louder than words. Each wrinkle seemed like a line written by the hand of life. One line for waiting, another for obedience, yet another for the nights inside the ark, listening only to the sound of the water and the beating of his heart. He knew he would not be there forever. Time takes its toll, but he also knew that what had begun with him would not end there. Noah died at the age of 950, a number that seems impossible today, but at that time was a mark of those who carried history in their bones. He was buried in peace, surrounded by his loved ones. No crowds, no grand ceremony, just a certainty that hung in the air. The world had changed because of a man who chose to listen, build, and trust. And even after his departure, his story continued to be told around the campfire, at family dinners, in advice passed down from father to son. Because Noah's legacy was not only in the ark he built, but in the choices he made when no one else wanted to choose the right thing. Noah's name continued to echo, even after he was no longer walking the earth. His story took root in the memory of humanity. And it wasn't just because of the ark, the rain, or the rainbow. It was because of his choices. At a time when almost everyone had turned their backs on God, he decided to listen. In a world where everyone lived as they pleased, he chose to obey, even if it seemed crazy, even if he was alone. We learned from Noah that faith is not just believing, it is building. It is continuing to hammer wood when no one understands, when no one helps, when everyone laughs. It is planting hope in ground that seems dry. It is trusting in promises that have not yet been fulfilled. Because that is what he did. He built a future inside a boat while the world was falling apart outside. His story also shows that there is no such thing as perfection. After the ark, after the promise, after the new beginning, he also made mistakes. He fell, he exposed himself, and even so, God did not erase his name from history. Because God is not looking for flawless heroes, he is looking for willing hearts, people who, even when they stumble, keep going. The rainbow still shines today, every time the sky darkens. And every time we look at it, it's as if God is saying again, I remember. The covenant continues, the care remains. And Noah's example is there, spanning generations, like a light in the midst of confusion. So when everything seems too dark, meaningless, when right seems strange and wrong seems fashionable, remember Noah. Remember that sometimes the first step to changing the world starts with a hammer, a plank, and the courage to do what no one else wants to do. If you liked Noah's story and want to continue following other stories of faith and overcoming adversity, be sure to like this video and share it with your loved ones. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content. Together, we will explore more powerful lessons from the Bible.